August 1945. As the Pacific War came to an end, realized the time has come. Americans began to plan to grow mushrooms on the Japanese mainland. These are not ordinary mushrooms. It's a weapon that's extremely destructive. Something that never appeared on Earth. Within seconds, a bright light flashed. The terrible heat radiated, with the same amount of heat as the sun. Firestorms carry deadly radiation. It covers all living things. 2 cities were razed to the ground. More than 100,000 people were immediately burned. But that's not all. Find out with us now about one of the historical events, the most tragic and controversial of all time. The United States dropped the atomic bomb, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In 1941, after the surprise Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. From a neutral country, the United States officially entered World War II. It's a great power with economic and defense potential. Number 1 on Earth. The United States showed tremendous power with the Allies, step by step to break the life of the German, Italian, Japanese alliance. Except the heavy failures, the naval battles of Midway and Leyte, continuously enduring the rain of bombs from U.S. military airstrikes. At this time, the Japanese army had become worn out. Morning the 3rd of October 1945. When millions of people are still asleep in wooden houses, more than 300 U.S. Air Force B-29 bombers dropped 500,000 petrol bombs and napalm down on Tokyo. It's a giant firestorm. It killed about 100,000 people. It didn't stop there. In just 3 months, from March to June 1945, Japan continues to be attacked by the U.S. in Okinawa, the bloodiest battle on the Pacific Theater. Land of the Rising Sun lost the last port of call on land. More than 77,000 soldiers were lost. Here, their fate is almost decided. However, while on the European front, Germany surrendered to the Allies unconditionally. On the Asian front, the Japanese have not yet accepted defeat. Martyrs see death as light as a rose. Heavy duty, as Tai Sun, was ingrained in the blood of the samurai army. Even though we have to suffer a lot of losses, they're kamikaze suicide bombers. They still have certain effects. They killed many of the Allied soldiers. Japan decided to use its persistence to fight the country. It's gaining the upper hand in every way. There is no weapon more powerful than a people who are not afraid of death. They believe just prolong the war. America will have to give in, and from there, Japan will make good deals. But Japan was wrong. If they have a suicide weapon, America has one. It's called the atomic bomb. Talk about the atomic bomb. We can't help but talk about $1 billion project. It's called Manhattan. Around the end of 1938, German scientists have discovered that when uranium atoms are bombarded, it can unleash a huge amount of energy. This laid the groundwork for the idea of inventing a new bomb. There's been a tremendous amount of destruction. It's a letter signed by Albert Einstein. It was sent to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, warning the White House about the chain reaction that nuclear boron creates. According to Albert Einstein, Nazi Germany. It's possible to use this newly discovered technology to create weapons of mass destruction. And so on the 17th of September 1942, after about 3 years of pregnancy, a top-secret project called Manhattan was born. The scientific director of the project was appointed, the physicist Robert Oppenheimer. He was later called the father of the atomic bomb. The headquarters of Manhattan, it's located at the National Laboratory Los Alamos in New Mexico. Every detail of the project is kept secret. 130,000 people participated in the project with the world's leading scientists, and a huge budget investment of $2 billion. 2 different types of atomic bombs have been built. One that uses enriched uranium, and the other uses plutonium. After 3 years in the lab, a group of scientists have finally built something. They believe it's an effective nuclear weapon. The 16th of July 1945, humanity's first nuclear bomb. It's called Gadget, transported to the Jornada del Muerto Desert, about Socorro, New Mexico, about 35 miles southeast for testing. When it explodes, Gadget is as powerful as 20,000 tons of TNT, creating a giant fireball and mushroom-shaped plumes up to 12 kilometers high. This result exceeded the group's expectations. Scientific researchers. This marks the first step in developing nuclear weapons. It opens a new page in human history. And less than a month later, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Before deciding to deliver the final blow into the land of the rising Sunday, July 1945, President of the United States, Harry Truman, used Potsdam's statement to remind the Japanese that if they try to prolong the war, the consequences will be even more catastrophic. But in the opposite direction, the Japanese government is not in a hurry. Royal Army, Japan has mobilized a large number of troops to defend the country in the last days of the war, while the politicians backed to a peace agreement. The Soviet Union acted as a mediator. This made Harry Truman very angry. You know, in World War II, Nazi Germany was defeated by the Soviet rear. On the American side, they still don't have a clear campaign. Unless Japan surrendered unconditionally, the United States is considered to be responsible in the greatest war in history. Even if you win the battle, the US has also suffered some losses for the confrontation with Japan. If the war continues to drag on, the damage will continue to grow exponentially. Estimate the number of soldiers killed in the United States alone. It can be up to 1 million people. And finally, the most important reason. Maybe the Japanese have forgotten, but with Americans, they've never forgotten their feud the 12th of July 1941. The day they were defeated and lost their most humiliating battle. While a general opposed the plan to use a nuclear bomb, President Truman reminded him of the Pearl Harbor tragedy. When you're up against a wild animal, you have to use your own method. Washington politicians believe that the use of nuclear bombs against Japan, it's going to be an arrow that hits 2 targets, quickly ended the war. On the one hand, there is one side to showing Moscow that America is in hand, a weapon that can decide any war. 4 major cities of Japan are included in the sites, including Kyoto, the main center of Japanese industry, Hiroshima, the largest military port, where a large number of ships are concentrated, with giant ammunition depots. Yokohama is home to many military factories, and Kokura, Japan's largest arsenal. Kyoto was chosen as the main target. It's not just a city with great industrial potential. It's also a gathering place for the Japanese elite of scientific and technical culture. If a nuclear attack actually happens in this city, Japanese civilization will most likely be wiped out. However, the U.S. Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, has a special affection for Kyoto. The couple spent their honeymoon in the city. Therefore, Kokura and Nagasaki become alternative cards. In the 31st of July 1945, the L-11 complex of the nuclear bomb was codenamed Little Boy. Be notified of completion and ready for duty. The bombing plan is scheduled for August 1st. A storm hit Japan that same day, has caused this plan to be postponed. General Curtis LeMay officially confirmed the mission to drop the boom Little Boy. It will be done in the 8th of June 1945. Little Boy is a bomb. It's made from uranium. With length 3 meters, diameter 71 centimeter, gasoline, and volume 4,000 kilograms, which carries 64 kilograms of uranium-235. It's designed to detonate like a handgun. When 2 uranium cores collide and reach the volume limit, the explosion will happen. 5/8 afternoon from Fenian Island. Military technicians pushed the Little Boy bomb out of the warehouse. Dozens of pilots stood around, look at it with a worried face. They've never seen a weapon. It's shaped like an armored egg, with a very strange tail. It's no different than a ventilator. After being thoroughly inspected, the gap in the nose of the bomb was sealed. This is the final stage. Make sure the environment inside it is stable. Highest efficiency when the drama is explosive. The bomb was transported by a specialized vehicle to the Knotfield military base, 2,400 kilometers from the Japanese mainland. On the afternoon of August 5th, the bomb bay in the belly of the B-29 opened. Little Boy is lifted by a hydraulic lift. According to the plan, there will be 7 B-29s on this secret special mission, including 3 PCS weather monitors, an explosion meter, 1 for filming, a spare one, and the last one was codenamed Enola Gay. It will be a bomb. Captain Paul Tibist serves as the squadron commander. Midnight, the pilots of the 7 B-29s met for the last time. Only a few pilots know their true mission. Until 2:45, the Enola Gay is gay takeoff, leaving the base. 3 a.m., bomb expert William Strilling Passon climb down into the Little Boy's hold, unplug the green plug, and replace it with the red one. The bomb has been defused. Clear sky, few clouds. After consulting with the Manhattan Campaign Command, Captain Tibbets decided Hiroshima would be the target. 6:30. Enola Gay begins to climb to 31,000 feet. At that time, the sun began to appear in Hiroshima. It was a beautiful weather day. 7M Observatory in Hiroshima was able to detect American spy planes. The alarm goes off. However, because of the small number, to save heat and preserve force, the Japanese military did not send fighters to intercept. On the side of the people, after the U.S. air raids, for months on end, they're used to the appearance of planes. Most people don't panic, and we're not in a hurry to get to the shelters. At that time, thousands of children were about 13 years old. It's going into the city center to participate in construction activities. No one knows, just a few more minutes. The sun's rays will turn into dark showers. It's filled with radioactive material. 8:15 a.m. Boeing B-29 Enola Gay Flying Fortress by Colonel Paul Tebest. Captain Robert Lewis is in charge. Dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima. The bomb's chamber door popped open just 44 seconds later. A bright light flashed. The B-29's body trembled because of the shockwave. Hiroshima is covered in a giant mushroom cloud. The pilots themselves must be terrified with what's going on in front of them, not to mention what the Japanese are going through. At an altitude of about 550 meters, the force of the explosion is equivalent to 15,000 T. TNT explosive is released. Within a 6-mile radius, everything was almost completely incinerated. Firestorms carry deadly radiation. It covers all creatures. At that time, Hiroshima had about 245,000 inhabitants. The terrible heat radiated. Air is subject to nuclear reactions. It heats up thousands of degrees. The ground below the explosion center, temperatures up to 4,000 degrees Celsius. 90% of homes destroyed. 70,000 people died instantly. There are people who have even turned to dust, just leaving shadows on the walls. In a split second, the roads and the cars completely melt. Almost the entire structure of the city was destroyed. All the watches that were found. They all died at 8:15, the moment the bomb exploded. Those lucky to survive had to go through a terrible pain of being burned. They don't even know they've been exposed to radiation. Thousands of victims. He continued to die in the following days in a state of hair loss, bleeding from the nose, mouth, and ears. According to estimates, the nuclear explosion in Hiroshima, it has killed more than 140,000 people, and that number continues to grow. 2 hours after the bombing, millions of American families practice around the radio to hear President Truman's announcement from the USS Augusta. We have successfully exploited the basic power of the universe. We're getting ready to clean up faster all the Japanese military factories and factories in any city. If they don't immediately accept the terms of surrender, they're going to get rain of fire from the air again. Things that have never been seen on Earth. On board the USS Augusta, President Truman held a press conference with the reporter who followed him to cover the Potsdam Conference. The Japanese have started a war with us from the air. At the Battle of Pearl Harbor, now they're being returned from the air. It is refunded many times. The 8th of August 1945. Along with warnings to Japan from the radio station on Saipan Island, about 6 million leaflets dropped in 47 major cities. Contents of the leaflet description: the atomic bomb is destructive. That's equivalent to 2,000 bombs dropped at the same time. At the same time, ask the Japanese, petition the emperor, end the war. However, in the opposite direction, the leaders of the cherry blossom country continue to ignore. Japan still has 5 million troops, 10,000 aircraft with more than half being kamikaze, and there's enough fuel left for another 7 months. Not to mention, to get Japan to admit defeat, the US decided to use a second atomic bomb to kill the enemy. It's a bomb codenamed Fat Man, also known as the Fat Guy. It has a length of 3.3 meters, diameter 1.5 meters, and weight 4,700 kilograms. Different from Little Boy, Fat Man has a core of plutonium-239, and it's designed to be implosion type. When detonated, The force of the explosive will crush the plutonium together until they're strong enough to reach the volume limit. Fat Man is scheduled to drop in Japan on August 11th. However, the weather is not favorable. It's been pushed up 3 days earlier. The bomb is heavily guarded and stored in an air-conditioned warehouse booth. The floor is covered with rubber to prevent the risk of accidental ignition. On the evening of August 8th, the bomb was loaded onto a B-29 Boxka at the Notice Base on Tinian Island, Pacific. The plane departs at night to get to Japan in time. The Boxka crew consisted of 12 members. It's about Captain Charles Sweeney. He was only 25 years old, and Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Ashworth, the person on duty, detonated the bomb. The target chosen for bombing was the city of Kokura. It's about 170 kilometers southwest of Hiroshima. It's home to one of the largest Nazi weapons depots in Japan. And surrounding it are industrial factories. Nagasaki is only the second option, if the situation doesn't allow the bombing of Kokura. While the first bombing campaign went well, in the second time, the incident occurred in most stages. The process for detonating the bomb, made of plutonium, is thought to be far more complicated. When the plane flew over Kokura airspace, the city is currently filled with a lot of smoke rising from the ground. This is the result of a firebombing of the plane's B-29. It happened 2 nights ago, aimed at a steel plant in Yawata. Within 50 minutes, the pilots attempted 3 shots to identify the target. They all failed. Clouds and smoke. It covers about 70% of Kokura. The B-29 Boxka consumes a large amount of fuel and constantly being discovered because of Yawata's dense defense system. Japan's air defense getting closer and closer. The crew decided, move to the second goal. That's Nagasaki. Nagasaki is a major military port. It was one of the largest shipbuilding centers in Nazi Japan. It is also where some large factories are located of Mitsubishi Company, specialized in the production of torpedoes, weapons and equipment of war. The city lies at the end of a long bay, with the hills running around the bay to cover the residential areas concentrated in the Urakami Valley. It's about 3 kilometers to the north. At the time of the bombing, the population of Nagasaki is about 263,000. It consisted of 240,000 civilians and 9,000 Japanese military personnel, 400 prisoners of war. Around 7:50 a.m., Japanese warning radar soon discovered the planes of the United States military. Alarms are sounding all over Nagasaki, but then it gets quiet at 8:30. Let's say it's just reconnaissance planes. Japan did not send fighter jets to intercept. Like Kokura, Nagasaki is also covered in clouds. That caused the pilot's vision to be impaired. Fortunately for them, at the last minute, officer and captain, I saw a gap between the clouds. Exactly 11:01 Japanese time, Fat Man bomb dropped from B-29. After a free fall of 43 seconds, at an altitude of nearly 500 meters, it officially exploded. This explosion, it was worse than the explosion in Hiroshima. It's a huge source of energy, equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT explosive released. The highest temperature is the center of the explosion, up to 4,000 degrees Celsius, with winds of about 1,000 kilometers per hour. The mushroom cloud rises to 18.2 kilometers, boiling vigorously. Although the target command explosion about 3.2 kilometers, but its destructive power is still terrible. 40,000 people died instantly. 2/3 of Nagasaki was almost flattened. The Urakami Valley completely disappeared. The bodies were burned. Bones piled up on the ground, and the survivors walked lifelessly through the rubble. The injuries they have to endure, it is more painful than death. Burnt hair, blistered face. The meat was terribly burned. Out of 7,500 Japanese employees working in the Mitsubishi plant, including students who are mobilized, the normal workers, 6,200 people were killed. About 17,000 to 22,000 people working in other factories in the city also died. The great earthquake that hit Nagasaki, it became a giant cemetery. Then people didn't know anything about radiation. The doctors said diarrhea and vomiting are caused by dysentery. The survivors are not protected. They wander in the ashes, looking for relatives to get a lethal dose of radiation. As of early 1946, a total of 80,000 people were killed by the atomic bomb in Nagasaki. 5 years later, that number had risen to 140,000. Most of the white blood disease victims and die in pain. According to statistics from many different sources, total number of people killed by 2 nuclear bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it could be more than 400,000 people. Before the awesome power of destruction, the 15th of August, 1945, the Emperor declared unconditional surrender to the Allies. World War II officially ended. Even though it helped end the war faster, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. It's caused a lot of controversy. A section of public opinion condemns it's a crime against humanity. Officially, we are pushing the world into a new arms race. It's called nuclear weapons. However, in the opposite direction, not a few on the side of the United States. The surrender of Japan marked an important milestone, ending the most devastating war in history, free millions of people from the occupied countries. After the 1945 nuclear disaster, the story of 12-year-old Sadako Sasaki, leukemia due to radiation exposure, fold 1,000 paper cranes with the dream of trading life for life. Inspired to travel across the country by the rising sun, paper cranes have been sent from everywhere. But the miracle didn't happen to the poor girl. After Sadako's death, 1958, a children's peace monument has been unveiled. Below the monument in bold text, "These are our tears. This is our prayer. Peace will come to this world."